Good evening, Load. We miss those open doors and the excitement of arriving into your midst. And Boker Tov in Santa Monica, we miss your beaches. And Salam Aleikum and Shalom and greetings to all our friends around the world, to Carlo in Kuwait, to Myrna in Florida, to everyone that's signing in that needs a little bit of an escape today. We have what you need. We have Jerusalem. We have Jerusalem. We have the sights, the sense, the sensibilities of Jerusalem that are so unique and create, among other things, from time to time conflict, but from time to time incredible, beautiful creations that might not exist anywhere else on this planet. That's the story we're going to tell today of Mekudeshet. We are going to talk about a lab of creativity and connectivity. And you are all connected with us today. We appreciate that all of us have been confined and quarantined and isolated and felt miserable. And some of us have one shot in our arm, some of us have two, some of us are looking for a shot. Wherever you are, for this hour, we're together. We're going to be inspired by people who literally create. They find ways to walk across barriers, to pass through barriers, to use superhuman strengths, to do what humans should be doing, connecting, creating, understanding one another, talking to one another in different languages, singing with each other, playing music and instruments that we hadn't heard before, creating new blends. That's very much what Mekudeshet is about. I'm going to introduce three amazing panelists who are all coming today from Jerusalem, from an amazing location. We'll share more about that afterwards. First, Karen Brunwasser, who came up with this brilliant idea as one of the co-founders of Mekudeshet and serves as their CSO now. Karen's humble origin started NYU, where she studied international relations and then went on to Hebrew University to study Middle East and Islam. She's been a program officer for the Schusterman Foundation in Israel. And now she has surrounded herself with some of the most creative and dynamic people around. Karen, we're looking forward to learning more about the organization and all of the life that you've breathed into it over this past decade. Apo Sahajian, you are a rock star. I mean, literally you're a rock star, but how many people have met a rock star that was born and bred in the Armenian Quarter? I mean, for me, you're the poster boy for the entire city of Jerusalem. You speak English, Hebrew, Arabic, Armenian. You could represent all four quarters, and as we're about to see, you've created music and creations that maybe could only be created from someone with your very unique background. You also have 2 degrees, having studied at IDC in Herzliya and also at the university in Budapest in Central Europe. We look forward to hearing about your mashup and your blend. Riman Barakat, you have devoted your life to bringing people together, to ignoring boundaries, to making realities that frankly wouldn't have existed otherwise. You've done this in multiple capacities. You're the director of East Jerusalem and Palestinian relations at Mekudeshet. We're going to learn more about what that role is. You've been the acting executive director of Breaking the Impasse Palestine from the World Economic Forum. We've previously done a webinar with them, and this is a terrific project that we know contributes to greater understanding and greater support of Palestinian culture and economy. You also have 2 graduate degrees in Middle East Studies. You know a little bit about the United States too. You've been a Fulbright at Marquette University in wonderful Wisconsin. We're thrilled to have you here. But look, there's no way I could turn to artists like yourself and art appreciators without showing some of what you've actually created. So I'm going to take a piece now, a short video that will give all of our viewers just a visual orientation to what you all have created. This is not from the recent period, so you won't see masks. This is before COVID, but I want you to get a feel for what these guys and gals do on a regular basis. So let's roll the first opening video, and then I'll give you guys each an opportunity to reflect on that, on what you do day in and day out. Okay, my heart is racing. I feel like I'm already there. I'm ready to jump on the roof of the Knesset or sit, in the middle of the highway there. Karen, how'd you, because you were there from the beginning, you've had a vision and you've watched this grow and develop. What did you have in mind when you were first creating it? And sitting from where you are now, what are you seeing today with Mekudeshet?
Well, first of all, Wayne, I just want to say your enthusiasm right now is really a breath of fresh air. It's the end of the day here in Israel, and so it's great that you're pumping energy that I feel all the way here in Jerusalem, and it's wonderful. And I'm so happy to be here with my friends and colleagues, Riman and Apple. So basically, I made Aliyah from Philadelphia, where I was born and raised. I fell madly in love with Jerusalem as a teenager and dreamed of coming back here. And by the time I came back here, the city was sort of in a really kind of rough space, not long after the second Intifada. I had to make a decision if I left or stayed. A lot of young creative people were leaving the city at the time. And I felt like this is my soulmate city. I can't leave it. I waited a long time to get here. And I looked for ways and other people who also felt very strongly about Jerusalem. And I got very, very lucky because I found not only the amazing colleagues that are here with me tonight, but a whole community of really wonderful people who believe in the city, who believe that its complexity, its diversity, its challenges are not liabilities, although sometimes there's liability in them sometimes, but they're really advantages that we can create amazing things from. And so Mekudeshet was an organization that we created in order to try and use art and culture to take the complexity, the diversity, the challenges of the city and turn them into something very, very positive, to use art, which is very sensitive, very nimble, to help people see the humanity in those who are different, to engage with one another, to check our own blind spots, and ultimately make this a better place. That's how it started.
Well, you have not just made this a better place, but it's an ongoing process. And anyone who has fallen in love with Jerusalem knows that people have fallen in love with Jerusalem, have written poems about Jerusalem, have written texts about Jerusalem and songs. And so you are continuing what I consider to be an incredibly holy tradition. And I'm so excited by what you're creating and the people you have around you, knowing that energy will benefit so many future residents of Jerusalem and future art students and lovers of Zion, and people who come and experience this as a way to explore something completely different. And I think the images we saw in the opening clip are a reminder to those of us who miss being there. Riman, let me turn to you for a moment to talk about the unique role that you're playing. Can you describe a little bit about what attracted you to Mekudeshet and what you've seen in East Jerusalem and working with the Palestinian community? How have people related to the message? Who are the people that you're drawing in? What have you learned, given your deep involvement with multiple communities in Jerusalem?
Wow, that's a bunch of questions. I start from my own place, where I started, and the complexity of the city that you've seen, like in that video, is very much like where I came from, and many of the spots that you've seen, like right in the heart of the old city where I grew up, a city of conflict, basically, that made me search around for ways to make this place a better place. And that's why I dedicated my life to being involved in all kinds of Israeli and Palestinian issues and relations and getting people together. Until I've kind of, that has been a long path, and sort of like the difficult moments, let's, to mention 2014 or other difficult moments, the first Intifada, the second Intifada, where I found myself looking for creative ways to go beyond those. And and finding creatives around in Jerusalem and making the first connections. I joined Mekudeshet in 2016. After, again, I've been involved in so many initiatives that involve Israelis and Palestinians. After I've kind of was many times frustrated, disappointed in what those efforts have brought. And I found a lot of hope in Mekudeshet. And that's because it was depicting, it was communicating a different kind of message, a different kind of voice that cared about the city, that cared about people, and sort of less put attention on the Israeli and Palestinian aspect of it, and focused on those people and what they're able to do given all those difficult circumstances. I kind of approached one creative at a time from the East Jerusalem community, from the artists and other creatives, to see where they are in those moments, in that moment in particular when I started working, and everyone was at a different place. There has been challenges of anti-normalization, of BDS, and still I found the people who have their hearts in the right place, and they want this place to be a better place, and so a community of artists just from one-on-one conversations has been created that, and it's already there. It's not that it has been created, it's already there. It's just like that we had to bring all these people together so each one realizes that they're not alone. And so this community, this platform has created much more than where we started.
Well, that's it's exciting to hear that from you, and again, the nuance with which you're speaking to the various both challenges and amazing opportunities, particularly for artists. So, Apo, today you literally are the poster boy for the artistic community in Jerusalem. I mean, this is a community where if you spit, you're likely to hit someone who's creating something. So it's better not to spit, but it is really fun to be in conversation with you as someone who's grown up, and as an artist in Jerusalem. We have people who have already written in the chat describing how much they love Armenian folk dancing, and you're bringing together very different pieces of the four quarters. So is that like a normal thing? To grow up with that kind of identity of all those different influences on a daily basis, and how is that how did that lead to Apo and the Apostles?
Well, I would say it's not a normal thing. It's only limited to the 700 Armenians that live in the old city. For us, it's a normal thing. If you're an Armenian from the old city, born and bred in the Armenian Quarter, you are very likely to speak Armenian as a mother tongue, English as a second tongue, and Hebrew and Arabic interchangeably. And with the languages, you're also familiar with the social cues and the narratives that come, be it the Israeli community or the Palestinian society. So you just learn these things by learning the language. And growing up dealing with these languages, I always wanted to explore it through music, because each of the languages comes with a different context, right? There are some cases, there are some contexts within my daily life that I'll know how to speak better in a certain language. So if I'm at the bank, I'm much better in Hebrew than I am in Arabic or in English or even in Armenian. If I'm at the grocery store, I'm much better in Arabic because I know all of the fruits and all the vegetables only in their Arabic name. I don't even know them in English, right? And but the way that I wanted to come out of those contexts was through music. So I just used these languages, and I wanted to practice these languages out of the context that I learned them in. So I went to music, and that's Apo and Apostles was just my attempt to learning Arabic. And it became a hit. That wasn't my intention. The intention was just to know how to have a better street grasp of the language. And it became what it became, and the rest is history, as they say. But if I wasn't an Armenian, I do not think, I mean, a lot of that comes by being an Armenian, by being, I'm not even going to say minority of a minority, because we are so minuscule on the charts that we don't really matter. I mean, we're the margins of the margins. And I guess only coming through that, you know, could somebody actually grasp these languages and utilize them in a way as I have done. I'm not saying that the Armenians are special in this, but when it comes to the old city, I guess we are put in that special context to do that. And I did it, and it succeeded, thank God, you know.
Well, you know, small but mighty, and creating beyond, you know, punching above the belt here, in the sense that really these traditions that all of the communities are invoking, in the history and the geography and the voices of Jerusalem are so powerful. They continue to echo, and seeing future generations come together around those influences and those sounds and smells of the shuk or daily bustling life in Jerusalem really is inspiring to so many of us. Apo, I want to come back to hear about some of your individual projects perhaps later, but you also play a role at Mekudeshet in terms of reaching out with other artists. And I'm curious if you could describe a little bit about that process. How does Mekudeshet interact with artists like you from different places in Jerusalem?
To be honest, there are a lot of organizations in Jerusalem that have good intentions, but they do not know how to actualize them, right? So their heart is in a good place, but for some reason, in the artistic world, there's this assumption that art, I mean, just forget about reality and just go to art, and, you know, people will forget. It doesn't work that way. Reality is too much of a force to ignore. And in Mekudeshet, or Jerusalem seasonal culture, I saw that there was this will and this determination to not ignore the elephant in the room, and that comes with honesty, or at least the attempt to be honest, and that is very important, and that really differentiated the organization from the rest of the organizations. And me coming from the Armenian Quarter, which is also, I mean, I am bureaucratically an East Jerusalemite, because I still am a Gentile, a Goy, born and bred in East Jerusalem. And that, in the bureaucratic sense, is an East Jerusalemite. So I was closer to the Palestinians, bureaucratically speaking. So I was also aware that if there's an organization in West Jerusalem that wants to make an outreach to East Jerusalem, then they have to be aware of the elephants in the room. Not just one elephant, there are 1,000, but you have to be aware of them. And there was this will in there, and there still is. And I just wanted to facilitate that, to make sure that, you know, we use the energy and the will, and to navigate it and focus it in the right way, in the right direction, to get the right results.
Well, that's like the perfect lead into the next video clip that I wanted to show. So let's take a look at that elephant in the room. This is a clip called "We Are Here," and I think it will speak for itself. Let's cue that up.
We. אנחנו, בניה ובנותיה של ירושלים.
יוצאים מהבתים, צועדים ברחובות, עולים אל הכיכרות ומכריזים בזאת,
אנחנו כאן. We are here to oppose evil, hatred and violence.
We are here to turn the light on.
نحن هنا لتحويل الجدران إلى جسور.
لتبديل الدمار بالإبداع. لتصليح ما قد تحطم.
אנחנו כאן, חמושים באהבת אדם וסבלנות אין קץ.
כדי להילחם על הבית שאנחנו כל כך אוהבים.
نحن هنا لأننا نؤمن بالخير
الذي في الإله, في الإنسان وفي الأرض.
We are here because the message will emanate from us to the surrounding hills, throughout this land,
and far beyond.
אנחנו כאן כי יותר מדי זמן שתקנו.
ועכשיו אנחנו זועקים את קולה של התקווה.
אנחנו הונה.
We are here. We are here.
אנחנו כאן.
אנחנו כאן.
אנחנו כאן.
Karen, one of the things I loved when I first watched this was your ability to tell stories literally on people as well as from people using different medium. And I know elsewhere we're going to explore a specific program about dissolving boundaries, but what does that concept mean at a high level? And we've already also had a question from one of our viewers about what happens. Elise, who knows a lot about Jerusalem and the artist community, what happens when there's non-cooperation? What happens when the people whose stories are being told, are not willing to join together as well? I think we should acknowledge that as well.
Sure. So maybe I'll take a step back and I'll say that, so Mekudeshet is an organization. I talked about it being an organization that uses art to bring people together. But the other thing that's really important about Mekudeshet is that we do city-specific art. We create art that emerges from Jerusalem. And so Jerusalem's reality is something that, for good and bad, has a big effect on not only, what's happening to us personally, but what we actually create. So that specific video that you just showed was something we created in the wake of the 2014 Gaza war, which was a big sort of crisis here, and forced us to cancel our big project. Our signature project, Mekudeshet, is an annual cultural festival that takes place all over the city in wild places. We really sort of turned Jerusalem into our playground for 3 weeks. And the war broke out 2 days before. And we were asking ourselves, what do we do with our stage, our spotlight at a moment of incredible crisis? And that crisis really was triggered by terrible things that happened in Jerusalem. And Jerusalem was a very tough place in those days. And what we wound up doing was going out into the city that we love so much and looking for people in all sectors who felt as we did, that we have this tremendous love of Jerusalem, that this violence was absolutely devastating, and that we believed that there was room enough for all of us here. And that video was part of a larger campaign where real Jerusalemites, real people, were sounding the voice of moderation. And that was an artistic expression of that. And you asked about the question of dissolving boundaries. Dissolving boundaries is essentially this notion that in Jerusalem, you have people with all different kinds of identities, very, very strong identities, and there's very strong boundaries in the city. But within a city of many boundaries, you also wind up attracting people who are really interested in grappling with those boundaries, not for the sake of erasing them, but for the sake of figuring out how we get along better here. So for example, Riman Barakat is a boundary dissolver. This is a extraordinary Palestinian woman who grew up going to school just outside the Damascus Gate in the heart of in the heart of East Jerusalem during the Second Intifada, and is very strongly Palestinian and also very strongly reaches out to us. Apo is a boundary dissolver, not only in his music and in his art, but also in the way that he lives. We heard that with his language. The city is full of these kinds of people who are incredibly brave, who are willing to ask difficult questions, sometimes stand up to gatekeepers who might want to shut them down, but who are strong in their identity and also are very committed to reaching out to other people. And we use this is sort of our best raw material. And we created a production specifically called Dissolving Boundaries. This is a journey that we invite audiences to go out on in the city of Jerusalem, where they get a headset and they go for 5 hours, for 7 hours in the city of Jerusalem, going to wild places all over, encountering people like Riman, people like Apo, and several hundred others that we've collected along the way, and sort of have their minds blown by the potential of the city, and especially the potential of the people of the city. And you asked one other question about what we do when people say no, and I think also I'd love for Riman to comment on that because she's really an expert in that, but I'll just say that we are now 10 years into Mekudeshet. Today we have an incredibly diverse team, but it took us 10 years to get there. It is not the kind of thing that you wake up one morning and do. You learn, You make lots of mistakes. We spent years and years running around the city, talking to people that were very skeptical of us, people who would talk to us but wouldn't collaborate with us. And over years and years and years of trying to show good faith and learning, making mistakes, and still pushing forward and still staying in the game, over time, we wound up creating relationships that we couldn't have imagined 10 years ago.
So, Riman, the Middle East in general and Jerusalem in particular is known for hospitality. It's such a wonder to be invited in, but often that's within communities. How has Mekudeshet used what it's learned in its social capital over this past decade to make people feel welcome that may be uncomfortable at times with some of the projects and the work that you're aspiring to create? We
have come a long way in terms of cultural competency and reaching out to the East Jerusalem Palestinian community. And we started with our own staff. So first of all, there was a decision within the organization of Mekudeshet to bring on Riman. And then Riman took the staff of Mekudeshet sometimes to difficult places in the city. We had to learn so much, hear difficult things. And there were days that everybody would come back from these learning days being extremely shocked and moved. But eventually, that kind of as difficult as that was, that kind of brought the points of view closer. And with time, we understood, of course, that the Palestinian community needs also to see the Israeli community. It can't be that we just assume that those Palestinians will come to West Jerusalem, and that we also need to, Karen and Nomi and other people in the organization need to go show their faces, attend events in East Jerusalem. And so it became some sort of an exchange. And that's very much something that's appreciated in Palestinian Arab culture. Things like making sure that language there, when somebody comes in, wants to order something at the bar or some food, that the menu is written in Arabic, that they're greeted in Arabic, that there are enough people around speaking Arabic that the Palestinian who would come would feel comfortable enough to participate. So it's from signs on the door to the choice of music. For me, I came as a guest, I remember in 2015, I believe, to one event of Mekudeshet, and I was shocked. I was shocked to hear in the music Arabic being sung, a rabbi with a kippah singing Kulthum, and that made me somehow it made me closer to it made me want to listen more, open my ears, and with a lot of curiosity. And I was like, what kind of Israeli organization exists in West Jerusalem or in Israel that does that? And it was very shocking to me, but it made me curious. It made me think that there is something very special going on. There is something very inclusive that wants to include the Arabic, the Hebrew, and all languages that could possibly exist in the city. And that was really a door that I felt if would open up to other Palestinians as well would do kind of the same or similar magic. Not to be naive about it, and today we see a lot of music videos being done by UAE and Israel and so on. I wouldn't compare them, because there has to be also something really authentic. The people have to emanate, this vibe that they are really sincere about their intention to reach out, and that they're doing that for a specific purpose, which is to include, and as Apo mentioned, not to exclude that sort of elephant in the room, to kind of look things in the eye, acknowledge the reality, and that's something that Mekudeshet, when they decided to bring me on, and understanding that I have a very strong Palestinian identity, and that I would challenge them to kind of like rethink or see things differently. That's a brave action. That's an action that wants to make real transformation, and not like a fake one. Not one that is like putting a bandage on the wound and then forgetting about it.
Apo, you talked before about the different linguistic influences and what comes out, and I know you've done collaborative projects in all the different languages, including with Shannon Street, with Hadaga Nachash. How do you feel when your songs are being sung or heard by Hebrew speakers or English people who aren't, may not even understand all the words that you're using, whether it's in Armenian or Arabic? How does that feel to you as an artist in terms of your interaction with an audience and with the kind of communities you're trying to reach?
That's a good question, but I want to be honest, that I don't like to overthink the answer. Whatever the audience gets, and however they get it, and however they conceptualize the song and their reaction to it, I usually just take it. Whatever they do, I'm usually okay with it. Whether they like it, they hate it, okay, sababa, as they say here. It's all good, And each project has had different reactions, or even similar reactions. Look, I mean, because I come from very different identities, I am an Armenian, first and foremost. So I did, Apo and Apostles is a band that is associated with the Palestinian scene. Nobody can go around that. You cannot bypass that reality.
The number one band, I'm told. The number one band. Number one indie rock band.
Statistically, according to Spotify, yes, we are.
Okay, we'll take that's very clear metrics.
And so, we did songs in Arabic, and the reception was also very positive from the Israeli crowd. Now, to my bandmates who are Palestinian, that was also strange. Wow, man, the Israelis are reacting to us in a positive way. And to a point, I know that most of the Israeli educational programs that teach Arabic, they do it through 3 of our songs. I think we have like 2-3 songs that are easy in Arabic, so they use those songs to learn Arabic. And I usually just told my boys in the band, just take it. What else are you gonna do? You cannot tell the Israelis not to listen to Apo and Apostles, just like you cannot tell the Palestinians don't listen to, I don't know, artists from France or from Europe. And at the same time, so I do another project which is Armenian folk music. And according to Spotify, my second biggest fan base is in Turkey. Now, I don't know how much your audience knows, but Armenians and Turks, we're not very good. We just went through war 3 months ago, But again, I'm not here to, put barricades and say, no, I want these people to listen to it and I don't want these people to listen to it. I just take it. And as an artist, I have to realize I don't want to be romantic about it. I'm very suspicious of romanticization. But as an artist, I have to appreciate the fact that music does seem to sneak into places that probably politics can't, words can't, statements can, and music can. I have to appreciate that to a certain extent, and I do that. And that's how I approach whatever the audience reaction is. Again, I don't like to overthink it, which I just think I just did. And that's why I'm very cautious of my answers.
Well, let's sneak into a Mekudeshet concert now. We've got a clip. I'm not going to introduce it. Each of you in your own ways have sort of prepared us for it. And we'll show everyone a couple of minutes of what an encounter with dissolved boundaries might look like. Well, in addition to Karen dancing on the panel, we have people dancing in their chairs at home. Maybe I'll start with you, Riman, because you mentioned earlier this idea that when you see someone not from your community singing and playing instruments and songs, who has this reached, you think, that in ways that maybe surprised you? Like, who has been open to this kind of experience from the work you're doing with Mekudeshet?
I'm not sure I understood the question very well.
Well, I given that this is a very different kind of experience culturally, some people will shy away from it, but maybe there's something in what you're creating that's so unique, so Jerusalem, that it's hard to walk away from that. It's hard to acknowledge you don't see these people, you don't hear these sounds, you don't have some connection with it. You don't want maybe even your body to start moving along with the beat because it just happens naturally. Have you uncovered a secret sauce of Jerusalem that's allowing people in instead of pushing them away?
I guess Jerusalem has a bit of everything, and with these songs especially, like, or an example of these songs, they're actually very Middle Eastern melodies, and many of the I will talk now about the Israelis that are listening to these songs, the 2,000 people that have come to such a concerts. Some of them are Palestinian who are used to these tunes, and they love seeing them recreated on stage. And the amazing thing is that they're done by Jews and Arabs equally. And then also there are the Israelis that are coming from Jewish origin as well, from Arab origin as well. And to them, Arabic is a familiar language that they've spoken at home, but maybe have not been brave enough to speak in sort of an Ashkenazi setting that is dominant. And more you see this in Israeli culture, that those of Arab origin are bringing out this culture and singing in Arabic and celebrating it, which makes us see that we are actually very similar in a lot of different ways, and that focuses us also on the commonality that is between us. So the secret sauce is finding that common thing between us, and whether it could be through language, but it's also very human. In one of those concerts, I was sitting in the audience, and there was someone next to me. And then my Hebrew wasn't that good. And he asked me something, and I replied to him in English. And then he's like, "Why are you speaking in English?" He thought I was Jewish, or I was an Israeli. So I told him, because my Hebrew is not good enough. And then I started to tell him the story of East Jerusalem and how we don't speak, how we don't learn Hebrew in school, etc., etc. But that was an example of a meeting that happened very naturally in the audience between an Israeli from Pisgat Ze'ev and a Palestinian from Beit Hanina, and we live side by side. That's like very much a neighborhood but we never get to, and he knows very little about me. And it starts with that sometimes, with getting to know something about the other person. So the secret sauce is finding that human connection, which, like, again, I like a lot of people sometimes like trivialize that, but that's really what it is about. It's not denying who we are, and that's important. That's what Jerusalem is about. We have all this diversity in Jerusalem, and what we do at Mekudeshet is kind of celebrate that diversity, allow each one to be themselves, and that the community of Mekudeshet makes the other feel okay with who they are. We could be different, but we don't have to fight because we're different. We can find ways to communicate.
Beautiful. Karen, could you we have a question about when and where that particular concert was. I know you've been on some hiatus now from big public events, but could you just sort of set the scene for that?
Sure. That event was called Kunna, which means all of us in Arabic. And that was an event on the seam line that once divided East and West Jerusalem, right beneath the old city walls. It was an event that worked off of the shared Middle Eastern culture that Jews and Arabs share. And actually, and that was in 2017. We did it again in 2018. And it was actually a huge success. That concert, it was written about in the New York Times and the BBC. It was such a success that we actually turned it into a permanent home. Riman, Apo, and I are now sitting in an extraordinary place called Fil Bet, which is Mekudeshet's new culture house that was, its roots were in that concert, actually. And we wanted to take something that was like a dream that we put on stage, what the Middle East could sound like one day if we didn't have these borders, and live it day to day in reality. So we now have a culture house that's also on the seam line between East and West on the Sherover Promenade. And this is a cultural venue where every single day we get up in the morning, we come to work, our collective of all different kinds of people, and we try to practice a better reality and create art that reflects this reality. And you're all welcome next time you come to Jerusalem to visit us.
We can't wait. Apo, what does it feel like when you're up on stage and you're performing and you know that there are people in the audience who might not be interacting with one another, as Riman was sharing, literally people sitting one next to the other who wouldn't normally be going to a concert together? and yet they're there and enjoying and experiencing something that is a unique creation that you as an artist have given them. What does that feel like to you?
So I'll give you two answers. All right. One answer is, at least they paid, so I'm all good, you know. Second answer is, we have to accept the fact that the political visions for Jerusalem have completely failed. So there isn't a public consensus around a vision for Jerusalem. All of the political visions have completely failed. And because right now there's a lack of a political horizon, culture has sort of come into this position that substitutes it. Like it replaces it for a time. And using that cultural platform, I believe it's responsibility of an artist to create an environment where when the political horizon comes back again, the public will make the same choice. Okay, I'm not saying whether they make a right choice or the wrong choice, but the same choice. And being in this cultural sphere, I don't mind using whatever tools I have, whether it's a stage, whether it's, you know, the microphone and all that, to create a subtle intellectual subconscious space where the audience is exposed to different realities, to different narratives. And then because one day when the political horizon returns again, we're going to be facing a junction. We're going to be standing at a junction, and we have to make the same choice for the betterment of not just Jerusalem, but, you know, the future of our children, grandchildren, and all that. I don't know if I'll be here. I might be in Armenia. I don't know, but so far I am here. So it is also my responsibility as a Jerusalemite. So when there are people in the crowd that I know have different political agendas, I know I know they would not agree with each other. I know they do not talk with each other. I don't mind. I don't want to force them. I don't want to force them to talk to each other. I do not want to force them to understand each other. The fact that they have made the step to come to my show is enough. You know, just like I said that I don't want to overthink what my answers, I also do not want to overdo what I'm doing. It's enough. And I believe every generation, not just every generation, every event will just take it a bit forward, step by step. That we cannot make a leap here. You know, this is a slow process. And the fact that they're there, it's enough for me. I am willing to go down to my grave knowing that I've done enough, you know, like I've done my share. That's how I come about, you know, these questions.
Well, it's fascinating. And you know, whether you're physically in Armenia, the fact is your music is there, and your music is in Turkey, and your music is in Jerusalem, and your music now is in the United States, and Spotify doesn't distinguish, right? And part of that, this reality of this moment that we're in has been a new kind of discovery. It doesn't replace hugging. It doesn't replace the attending a concert in person, but we have needed to find ways to adapt. And Karen, I know you came up with a creative way to allow people to experience it. You had hoped they were all coming. You would hope they'd be on our AIFL delegations that we've not been able to send over this past year. We hope those will be coming back soon. But while Ben Gurion, it remains one of the most quiet places in the country, you innovated and came up with a Jerusalem in the box, as it were. You want to explain a little bit about this next segment that we're going to see, and what you had in mind in creating an experience that people could connect to, even if they were not physically in your audience at a concert?
Sure, absolutely. So I mentioned before that we have an artistic project for many years now in the festival. It's one of our most popular projects. It's called Dissolving Boundaries, these journeys throughout Jerusalem where you meet people like Rayman and Apo and others, these boundary dissolvers. And it's really an experience that takes you into a divided city and helps you to see the light, the potential for bridging those divides. It's something, it's as an experience, it's one that's like an antidote to polarization. And because we know that polarization is a major problem, not also not just here, but certainly also where you all are, we thought that that message of dissolving boundaries was one that could find the right place in a global audience. So we've adapted that dissolving boundaries experience so that you in America or anybody anywhere in the world can bring Jerusalem and the journey with the boundary dissolvers into your own home. There's an audio component where you get to listen to Jerusalem, to the stories, and then there's a package that also arrives in the mail that has all kinds of things from Jerusalem that activate you along the journey, things to taste, things to smell, something to write in, so that you really feel as if you're not only exploring the boundaries in Jerusalem, but also reflecting on the boundaries and the complexity and the divides in your own life, and thinking about how you can become more of a boundary dissolver yourself. That's an experience that we're offering now to anyone, anywhere they are in the world, and you can experience it by going to dissolvingboundaries.live and bring Jerusalem into your own house.
All right, well, let's take a look. We have a short clip here that will give you a little feel of Jerusalem in a box.
When was the last time you received a package from Jerusalem?
Hello. Shalom.
Marhaba. At long last we meet. We embark on a journey together. This is your journey. You are the protagonist. You will meet people along the way. Folks who help me make sense of this crazy place. You'll encounter different places. Which boundary should you grapple with? And which should you preserve zealously?
So Karen, how have people reacted to this so far? Can you bottle it up? I
think people are really enjoying it. It's a very immersive experience, and I think for people who are really missing this place right now, and also for people that have never been here, it is a way to connect in a very, very deep sense with the city and its people, and hopefully also find some inspiration in this very, very dark time. One of the things that I think is really so amazing about Jerusalem, about this place, is that you live in very high resolution with real human beings, with real people. And in high resolution, you see possibilities that you can't see from afar. And unfortunately, this time of COVID has distanced us and kept us further from one another than ever. And we're spending so much time on screens. We're spending so much time on social media, listening to regular media, and that can make you, quite frankly, a nervous wreck, really. And so this is something that brings you back to human beings again, brings you back to real people where things are complicated, but also sometimes very practical. Sometimes you can find a solution because you need to, which is what we do here in Jerusalem. And hopefully we can all get back to connecting with the people around us again, instead of just experiencing them as political abstractions on a media channel.
Riman, someone in the one of the questioners asked about whether you're related to the Barakats of the old city, who are renowned antique dealers, and it turns out this is news to me that you are. I wonder, as I think about the work you're doing now, do you feel like it's a continuation of your family business in a new way?
Well, I'll tell you about my grandfather, who had a shop in the old city, and he was the one who gave me the secret sauce, because at the time that I grew up in a divided city that very much had this kind of like psychological divide between East and West, and I never saw or met Israelis when I was that young, except through my grandfather, who had a shop in the old city, and he was he was buying goods from Israelis, and Israelis were visiting him, and it felt a normal thing that they would come visit, have a cup of coffee. And later on, when the first Intifada started, that image of my grandfather speaking to those Israelis that visited stayed in my memory. When the first Intifada started, I saw something that was very different. I saw Israelis with guns, and that made me sort of question, what is that? What is behind the suit? Who are the human beings behind that? And it led me to sort of like the path I've taken, which is to kind of like, though then I saw very much Israelis as enemies, but it led me to kind of like look beyond and look for the human being behind what was called enemy. Even though really, like the first time I engaged with Israelis, other than through my grandfather, I had my very strong opinions. I was very nationalistic. I was, I kind of like was refusing to move like an inch. But that's really what the elephant in the room is about. That's like the work of transformation in Jerusalem is about, is that you have to stay enough time in the water to change. It's like a piece of wood that with time has to change. And that interaction with more and more, of course, I had like the will, the curiosity, the questioning in my head. But, you know, I gave it the time to listen to the other and be listened to. And somehow find many answers in that journey. And sometimes it is a matter of listening more deeply.
Well, I want to sneak in one last video clip of the place where the three of you are now, just so everyone can get a glimpse of that. And then I'm going to ask each of you for just one sentence about what it feels like to go to work every day when you're allowed to be in the office, that is, but I know that's where all three of you are now. So let's take a look at the actual site that you're at to have a final feel from Jerusalem. Apo?
In one sentence, the Wi-Fi is good, and there's an open bar. I'm sold.
Everything you need as an artist, right?
Yep.
And feel by it?
And feel bad. I mean, that is the point. It's a great place to actually meet people. It's we have the facilities here to record podcasts, to interact, to mingle. Again, the Wi-Fi, the open bar, these are jokes, but they do help. But they do help in shaping an environment that, you know, contributes to mingling, and that is important. It creates the right vibe. It just creates the vibes of Sababa, and you don't have Sababa, you don't have life.
Riman, it's not the old city, but how does it feel?
It feels very magical. Yeah, it's the place that we envisioned like to be down on earth and not on the stage. There's sort of like there is the stage, but that's our everyday. Our everyday, we hear all the languages, and that for me is a huge accomplishment. It gives me a lot of hope every day.
Thanks. Karen, I'll give you the last word. And I see you've replaced the elephant in the room with the rhino in the room.
So rhinoceros in the room.
Yeah.
Yes. You've just interpreted the art beautifully. Amazing. So for me, like Riman said, Bilbet is actually a dream that we've realized. And I come into work every day so excited to see my colleagues who are also friends, and just to see what happens, what the day brings, because there's such a wild mix of artists and activists from Jerusalem, all different kinds of people coming in and out, talking to one another. And you just never know who's going to walk through the door and what crazy project or idea is going to come up. So,
okay.
Privilege. Well, I feel privileged.
Look, Apo, Karen, Riemann, spoiler alert, today's my birthday. You just gave me an amazing present.
Happy birthday, Wayne.
Well, thanks for this as what I needed was some Jerusalem today. You gave it to me. And really everything you've created here has such potential. We're waiting for the opportunity to be in the crowd to listen and dance to Apo's songs and to meet some of Riemann's community and to continue to grow and build this wonderful endeavor you've created. For everybody, while we're waiting, we've got virtual tours for you this coming Sunday. It's Reuven, Solomon again, Ashdod, Ashkelon will be there. We will promise some interesting ways to view those particular sites and see just how amazing they are today. Thanks everyone for being with us. Stay safe and greetings and shalom from Jerusalem.